quite possible that Facebook could have been headquartered in Ohio or Florida, New Jersey, North Carolina, but somewhere here in the United States of America instead of Switzerland. Solving idea flight from America needs to be a top priority for Congress. And today we urge our House and Senate colleagues to consider several policy areas in the upcoming Facebook Libra hearings. First and foremost, clarity, regulatory clarity that would define what is the language? What is the taxonomy of the space? What is a digital token? Is it a security or not a security? And then fundamentally, let's be clear, you can't circumvent the U.S. regulatory framework just because it's digital. So some of the companies that have launched in ICO space or exchanges have essentially engaged in regulatory arbitrage. So having that certainty will help prevent that and also protect consumers. So consumers are often taken advantage of with information asymmetry. And the reality is closing that information asymmetry comes to bear with the clarity. American innovators are protected when we have that clarity because they can launch here in the United States. And lastly, one of the challenges is taxation. So for normal currencies, say pounds, euros, yen, RMB, there's a de minimis exception already in U.S. law. And we're just asking that you have the same sort of de minimis treatment that is treated as real property, so like-kind exchanges can happen. And this facilitates a framework that would bring the United States to a minimum level of competitiveness. These policies are addressed in our bipartisan Token Taxonomy Act. It enjoys support from a broad bipartisan group and over 75 other organizations. The policies we address in the Token Taxonomy Act are just a starting point. We look forward to the hearings, but I want to highlight that failure to act leaves American consumers less protected from fraud and from those who would exploit the information asymmetries in the space. Now let me introduce my colleague and friend, the Vice Chair of the Blockchain Caucus, Congressman Darren Soto.
Hey, thanks, guys. Another guy from Florida we can applaud for. Thank you, Congressman Davidson. This is about the future of tech, the future of the internet, the future of economic dominance in the 21st century for the United States. And we can't sit idly by on the sidelines and fear what could happen. We have to boldly lead, knowing that this is the only way to continue our nation's prosperity. We see exciting technological advances in digital currencies and payments. These are a big step forward to more global and inclusive financial infrastructure. They have the potential to become a driver of economic change, potential to further connect our society and increase accessibility, and the potential for the United States to become the global leader and continue on the forefront of these innovations. Facebook's new Libra and Calibra initiatives have this potential. This could be the starting point of achieving these goals. But we know optimism must be met with governance. Our number one priority will always be consumers and user privacy protections. It is Congress's duty to regulate and to conduct oversight, and that's what we will continue to do. But we must do so striking a careful balance to not halt innovation. Next week's hearing should be viewed as an educational opportunity, a chance for us to become better informed of the risks, what we can do to mitigate them, and how we can work together to maximize the potential for the U.S. economy. We've also introduced bipartisan legislation that does just that, define the blockchain landscape and determine how it will be regulated. Both the Token Taxonomy Act and the Digital Taxonomy Act help establish a few basic rules of the road, because a cryptocurrency can be a currency, it could be a future, or it could be a security or commodity. And so these key pieces of legislation that we're supporting up here would establish who will regulate it versus the SEC, the FTC, and the CFTC, and when it's one of those three categories. These efforts have been supplemented by legislative wins we just got passed in reaching funding bills. Specifically, all three of them acknowledge the potential of virtual currencies, but identify areas to better protect customers in the budget. I want to thank all the members here who are co-sponsors. To end, we need to lead and not concede, regulate but not eliminate, and embrace the future rather than be stuck in the past. And with that, I'd like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Congressman Josh Gottheimer. Not at all. He's in the future, everybody, just in case.
Thank you very much, Darren. I think we are all here because we believe that new frontiers presented by financial technology present an incredible opportunity for American leadership, economic growth, and job creation. In my district, the 5th District of Jersey, so many people work in the financial industry or on the cutting edge of financial technology that this sector provides an incredible opportunity of growth for my district and my state. But I personally heard from so many companies, from startups, from entrepreneurs, from the likes who are hearing obviously from Facebook, who are telling us that they basically are looking at it and saying they've been instructed or directed to set up shop in countries like Singapore, Switzerland, Bermuda, and beyond, just because of the regulatory uncertainty in the United States. They just don't know where this is going to go. They don't understand actually who to look to, who's going to present for them their way forward. And because of that, they're going elsewhere instead of here in the United States of America, where we have led the world in technology, we've led the world in the apps economy, and now we have another enormous opportunity. And the key in why we're together and why we're working this legislation together in a bipartisan way is to make sure we don't blow it. And we're operating under legislation that dates back to 1933 and 1934, the Securities Exchange Act. And how are we supposed to stay competitive when we're playing with one hand tied behind our backs? We've got to ensure that we're establishing the U.S. as the premier destination for companies who focus on blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and other digital instruments. What we need is a legislative roadmap to U.S. leadership in this space, and the Bipartisan Token Taxonomy Act does just that. It supplies us with a framework that not only provides a clear path forward for open blockchain projects, but does so with a light touch to leave space for American innovation and innovators that will drive growth and job creation. It protects consumers while promoting market solutions and competition on the world stage, and it will solidify the U.S. as the best destination for ICO markets in the world. This major issue of idea flight in America, of innovation in sectors like fintech heading off to other countries, needs to be a top priority for Congress. We have to come together, and this is why we are standing here in the blazing hot sun to fix just this. Darren from Florida is the only one who's not sweating. It's in his it's in his jeans, but we got to work together because we know the United States has a very bright future as a leader in this space. As new financial technologies continue to emerge, we are calling on Congress to come together, to put frameworks in place and provide a much clearer path forward to establish ourselves as a leading force to create jobs, spur much needed innovation for people not just in Jersey, but all across our great country. And with that, the man from North Carolina with a phenomenal beard, Ted Budd.
It's on its way. Thank you, Congressman Gottheimer. So we're in front of the world's greatest deliberative body today in a bipartisan manner to show the world that Congress is serious about enacting smart, common sense laws and regulations as it relates to cryptocurrencies and digital assets. And I want to highlight quickly some tax issues and bipartisan fixes that our colleagues, I know the ones here today are aware of it, but some other colleagues, I want to make them aware. First, my own legislation, the virtual value tax fix, or HR 7361 from last Congress, the 115th Congress, is a good example of where we can start in a very bipartisan manner. This is a simple idea that ensures that digital assets are recognized as property eligible for like-kind exchange. That may sound familiar. It's a tax deferral treatment historically allowed under Section 1031. What I've seen under the law as written is literally double taxation of blockchain transactions, whose economic reality is treated as a purchase as well as a sale. This current tax treatment causes a much higher and out-of-whack record-keeping burden on taxpayers, and it serves as a deterrent to all blockchain-based activity, and Congress must address this. Secondly, and this is covered under the Token Taxonomy Act, it is important for lawmakers to extend the de minimis exemption for personal transactions in foreign, just as they do in foreign currency, to cover transaction in blockchain tokens as well. The law currently requires you to calculate and pay the tax liability associated with any transaction, even on a purchase, for example, like a 65-cent can of soda. And this is just not a sustainable model. So bottom line, I know that this group of people gathered here today can get the ball rolling on smart and efficient cryptocurrency tax laws, whether it's the Token Taxonomy Act or the Virtual Value Fix Act. But what I'm excited to work on are all these things together. And I now want to introduce my friend, Kristen Smith, who's been so helpful on this. Kristen, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kristen Smith, and I run the Blockchain Association, a trade association representing the cryptocurrency industry. Our members strongly believe that open blockchain networks and the cryptocurrencies that fuel them will drive the next generation of innovation and economic growth. Blockchain networks have the power to revolutionize digital services in ways that solve many important issues that society is grappling with today, including data privacy, information security, and the power of centralized tech monopolies. Facebook's Libra project is just one early stage project, and we're still learning how it stacks up against established blockchain networks. But one thing is clear, the US needs to be the leader in financial services and technology for the next 100 years, like we've been for the past 100 years. Unfortunately, our leadership is under threat. The most promising blockchain networks have already taken steps to distance themselves from the United States. To reverse this troubling trend, we need clear policies that protect consumers while allowing open blockchain technology to flourish. The Blockchain Association applauds the leadership of Representatives Davidson, Soto, Gottheimer, and Budd, and we look forward to working with these members and others in Congress to craft policies that will ensure we don't surrender our global leadership. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ian Darrow with Protocol Labs.
I work for a company called Protocol Labs. We are a group of researchers and engineers who really love the internet, and we've decided to spend every day working to make it even better than it already is. Our country has a long history of actively supporting new technology, and it's paid off so far. The computer revolution began here. The internet was created here, and it's grown here in large part because legislators recognized and nurtured its potential. Now, that type of support doesn't just magically happen. You need smart and curious people in government to take the time to learn about cutting-edge technology and to decide to become champions. Sometimes they have to push through some skepticism because they've gotten to the future just a little bit sooner than some of their colleagues. Now, these representatives that are here today are part of that story. They're the ones who are putting in work, building coalitions, and drafting legislation to help companies innovate here in the US instead of going overseas. That work matters to companies like mine, and I thank you. Now, next week, we're going to hear a lot about Facebook and Libra. We'll hear some support, we'll hear some tough questions, and as you're following along, just remember that Libra is one cryptocurrency project joining a broad and diverse industry. And that industry might be young, but we believe it has the potential to change the world just like the internet has. If you think back to the early 90s, the internet was really just for geeks. Some people on the Hill even thought that it was scary. Then AOL came along, and it provided an on-ramp to the internet for the rest of us. AOL wasn't the final version of the internet, but it helped millions of people get comfortable and adopt new technology. We needed that early consumer product to build a bridge to the amazing internet that we all use and love today. So, when you hear about Libra, just remember, cryptocurrency today is sort of like the internet in the late 80s. We can't possibly guess all the new things that it will help us do, but Congress can help us figure it out by providing clear, bipartisan leadership in support of new technology. With that, I'll introduce my colleague, Cleve Messidor.
Good afternoon. I'm a startup founder. I want to thank the bipartisan group of lawmakers here today for their leadership. Congressman Davidson, Soto, Gottheimer, Perry, Budd are true advocates for the diverse and vibrant blockchain space. I am here today on behalf of the Latina, Native, Middle Eastern, Asian, millennial women of color across the country who have a stake in the Washington debate around the federal regulatory framework. Women of color are the engine of the crypto ecosystem. Over the last decade, women have been leveraging blockchain technology to build products and services to solve society's most pressing problems. So it is not just wealthy investors or million-dollar companies, as some assume, who actually want regulatory clarity and certainty. I'm here because this is a bipartisan issue, and members of Congress need to hear from the many voices that make up the blockchain community. I am working with a diverse group of women leaders in the blockchain community who will convene on Capitol Hill in October to host an educational briefing for members and staffers. And I want to thank the Congressional Blockchain Caucus for their support. We all know that small businesses continue to be the backbone of the American economy. Female entrepreneurs and founders of color are driving the innovation economy. As we move towards this fourth industrial revolution, make no mistake, prolonged regulatory uncertainty will have an impact on diversity and gender inclusion in the crypto space. I commend the lawmakers here today for introducing legislation to try to solve the murky legal issues surrounding digital tokens. Next week's conversation about Facebook's Libra is an important one, but it should not overshadow the awesome responsibility that Congress has to the diverse leaders who are fueling blockchain's growth. Women of color across the country stand ready to work with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to explore smart legislation to ensure we can continue to build and grow our blockchain enterprises right here in America. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and together we'll take a short number of questions and then wrap up. Yes, sir.
Hey, Representative, a lot of your colleagues in the House have called for, Maxine Waters, for example, has called for Facebook to halt the implementation of Libra. A lot of other colleagues, like Steve Stivers, asked the Fed what they can do to essentially stop Libra. I just want to know, the four of you, if you guys would agree that there should be some caution there, or if you guys think Libra should go forward as fast as possible and we should just get out of the way.
Well, I think we've been pushing for hearings for a while, and we're all, three of us are part of financial services, and Darren's covering the energy and commerce lane, which is why his Digital Taxonomy Act is also very important, because a lot of the tokens actually represent goods or services. Libra is launched in a way that is essentially a payment system, and I think a lot of people who are new to this space want that pause to say, wait, what is this all about? And there have been people here working on it for a while, and it's an accelerant for us to have the conversation we've been trying to have for a little while. So I think we look forward to the hearing next week, and we'll let each member speak for themselves in terms of where they are. I think together we've been asking for this regulatory certainty for some time, and some of you were there in September when we were holding a roundtable just over there at the Library of Congress, and we had top leaders from not just this space, but some of the biggest venture firms in the United States, and recent Horowitz, for example, some of the biggest investment management firms, State Street, Fidelity, NASDAQ, representatives, Intercontinental Exchange folks. So you had some of the biggest people in financial services there. So as has been highlighted, the space is not new. Congress has been a little bit behind in terms of what to do with it.
So you guys are, to be clear, supportive of Libra? Do you guys want to see it happen?
We need to embrace it and legislate Libra. If we don't, our other option is to do nothing, and then it'll go abroad and we'll have no control. So I think the key is passing the platform that we put forward. Standing on the sideline just means you'll have all the problems and all the countries that don't share our values helping lead this in a way that we wouldn't want them to. So it's all about making sure that we embrace and regulate. That's the best way for American leadership forward.
And I think, by the way, from my perspective, this next week's hearing forces the issue. The whole idea is to, as it's been saying, we have to have the conversation. Where I come from, and I want to speak to my colleagues, is I don't want to lose the jobs and innovation elsewhere. And so, if you don't actually provide any kind of certainty, we're going to lose not just the company we're talking to next week, but other companies. I think that is actually the issue at hand. And so I'm glad we're actually going to have the conversation. Hopefully, out of it comes, a clear need that we actually have to pass legislation.
Dave here from MLEX. Just wondering if you all have any thoughts about the potential privacy implications of Facebook getting visibility into purchases, not just at the actual store, but the actual item that's being purchased.
Well, so a lot of those things specific to Facebook will come out next week. I think, as has been said, look, Facebook's proposal to use a nonprofit to basically administer Libra and then to launch their own product as a digital wallet for Libra. What are the degrees of separation there? And what we know right now is their white paper. They're not they're not in the sense totally separated. Where if you look at Bitcoin, it's so separated, no one really knows who the original creator is. Where's the headquarters for it, right? It's decentralized, and it's as close to peer-to-peer as you'll see.